We are ready to show you how to create the Santa's bag patch for our burlap sacks. So let's get started. Okay, so we're ready to start creating the patch for our Santa's bag. And the reason we're having to do it on a patch is because these burlap bags are already stitched closed. And so you wouldn't really be able to get down in there easily to do this embroidery design. So the patches are just something kind of handy when you can't get your embroidery machine down in something, a hat, you know, caps, stuff like that. So with the bag, you also received a piece of the green fabric, and that's what we're going to be embroidering on. And so to get mine ready, I have starched it a little bit. I've ironed a piece of SF101, the fusible interfacing on the back side, and then I sprayed it with 505 spray, and I've stuck it down to my cutaway. So your two stabilizers that you're going to use for this project, you're going to have a piece of heavyweight cutaway first, and so that's what I have hooped up already. And then for the next step, you're going to need a piece of the aqua mesh water soluble stabilizer, but that will be for the next step. Then with your piece of fabric, you also received a piece of this fusion seal, and it is just a really thick, heavy fusible web basically, and it's what we use to create the patches because you know, when you purchase a patch, like, you know, think of Boy Scout, Girl Scout patches, things like that, they have that fusible on the back so you can just iron them down. So this is heavy enough that once it's fused down, you don't have to stitch it down. It's strong enough to hold it and be permanent, but this will be done later, used when we're done with the embroidery. So I've hooked up my cutaway, I've sprayed and taped my piece of fabric onto it, and then I have brought up the design that we gave you on your USB stick. Now I have my needles laying here. I did go ahead and put a new needle in my machine to get started with this. So when you're starting a project that's going to have a lot of stitches, it's a good idea, put a new needle in the machine. Now, once I bring the design up, some of your pieces of fabric, like mine, had the selvage on it right here. And so I'm just making sure, once I bring the design up and I have this taped down, I'm going to make sure I'm going to miss this piece of selvage. So on the machine, I'm just going into the little trial icon. Get my stylus up here. There. And then you can hit the trial and let it move and make sure I'm going to be bypassing and not sewing into that piece of fabric. And so that's close enough. I am going to be trimming this down, you know, in the process. So I'm good there. So we're ready to go. Okay, so the thread that I'm going to be using, we're going to go over that before we get started. So it's going to stitch the words first, and so I've got my machine threaded up with black. Then it's going to do the Santa Claus. So I've got the thread colors lined up for him, and so I'm just going to go over these with you real fast. It stitches his face first, so I've just got kind of a pale pink color. Then his cheeks. The red's going to be his hat and coat. The darker red is the shading on his hat and coat. Then the white will be his beard and mustache. This is kind of a dark brown or dark gray. This is going to be just his little, his eyes. It just has like a little U-shaped eyes. And then the black will be his boots and the belt. The ecru, or kind of the off-white, will be the fur on his hat and coat. Then this is going to be the kind of the silver part on his boots, kind of his laces or his buckles on his boots. And then the gold is going to be the buckle on his belt. Then this is kind of a silvery color, whatever color. This is going to be for his gloves. So you could do that whatever color you want his gloves to be. And then the green is not in the Santa Claus, but that's what we're going to use to create the rest of the patch, do the satin stitch around the patch and everything. So those are the colors we're going to use. I've got it threaded up with the black. Again, it's going to start with that. Now it's going to stitch the words first. and it's going to take about, it says, the machine says 17 minutes to stitch the words. And so we're just going to go through and probably stitch the whole thing. So we're just going to sew the words, sew the Santa Claus, and then we'll come back to the actual process of making the patch. So we will be back. We're popping back on here because I wanted to show y'all something. This is actually the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and Bailey is here at my house because we were going to clean the storage building for the store. It's a mess, and so we were going to use today to get that done. And we just thought, okay, we're going to film this video real fast for you. So while the words are stitching, since it's going to take 17 minutes to stitch off, we're going to go out and we're going to start cleaning. And I'm going to use this app to kind of keep track of my machine. The Brother Luminaire machines and the Baby Lock Solaris have this monitoring app. And so what I can do is I've gone into the app, and when I start the machine stitching, the app kind of tells me where it's at and what it's doing. And so when it's done stitching this, we can come back in and then we can start rethreading the machine and stitching off the Santa Claus. So I just thought I'd show y'all that because it comes in handy. And now we've got all the words and the Santa Claus stitched off, and I've threaded up with the green. And what's going to stitch next is just going to be a straight stitch in the shape of the patch. And this is where we're going to cut. So after it's done stitching this, we're going to unhoop it and we're going to cut it out. So we'll be cutting the cutaway stabilizer and the fabric in the shape of this rectangle. Okay, so we're just going to unhoop it, and then I'm just going to take my scissors and we'll cut that out. So we'll be back. Okay, we got the patch cut out, and so I just cut, right to the outside of that line, and then I have sprayed it generously with 505 spray, so it's really tacky. So you could either do that, spray the back of the patch with the 505 spray. I've hooped up a piece of the Aquamesh stabilizer, and so another option would be if you wanted to use the sticky back water soluble, so that's the Aquamesh Plus, and so you could hoop that up, score the paper, peel the paper away, and then it's sticky, but it's still a water soluble, so you could use either one. So I'm just using the Aquamesh plain that's not sticky, so I've sprayed the back of it with the 505 spray, and what it's going to stitch out now is just another straight stitch line in the shape of the patch, and this is going to be the placement line, so where we're going to lay the patch down. Okay, then we're going to lay the patch exactly the way he was stitched off. So see how Santa Claus is up here at the top. So don't lay it like this, because just in case these corners, are different, you want to lay it down exactly the way it is on your screen, and just match up your corners and lay it down on top of that placement line, and then just stick it down good. And then what it's going to do now is a satin stitch all the way around. We'll come back when it's done because this is going to take 12 minutes to stitch the satin stitch. Okay, it's done doing the satin stitch, and so now it's done with the embroidery. So you will unhoop it, and then what I'm going to do now is just trim the water soluble right up next to the satin stitch with my scissors again. So just take your scissors and trim that. Be real careful. I mean, you don't have to get right up next to it. You know, get maybe about 1/8 of an inch away. Just don't cut your stitches because then they'll start unraveling. So we're going to trim that out, and then I'm just going to take a little bit of water and kind of rub with my finger along the water soluble that's left, and that will kind of dissolve all of that. So when we're done doing that, we'll come back. Before I go in and dissolve the edges of the water soluble, I am also going to trim all this excess of the water soluble on the back. So I just cut me a slit there, and then I'm just going to take my scissors and go up, and again, just try to get close, but don't clip your stitches, and just go up in there and trim all of that away also. Then I will take it and dissolve what's left on the outside edge. So when we're done doing that, we'll come back. Okay, we've got all the water soluble rinsed out and it's dry. And so now we're going to take the piece of the Fusion Seal. Okay, and so this is kind of a slick side, but it's a paper side, and then this side is, it's a little bumpier. This is the fusible side. So the fusible side is what we're going to iron up against the back side of our patch. So I'm going to lay my patch on top of it like this, so the fusible side up on the Fusion Seal, the right side of the patch up, and then I'm just going to draw around the patch to get my shape, and then I'll cut it out to the inside of that line, and then we'll bond it, fuse it together. Right. I'm just going to cut that out. We'll come back when we're done. And Bailey said to, I just picked up this ballpoint pen, and she said to use a ballpoint pen when you're drawing on this, because she said she tried a Sharpie and it just kind of smeared and all. So just use a regular pen when you're drawing that. And then once you have it trimmed, then turn your patch over, and now you're going to lay the fusible side. So this is the side that's kind of bumpy. Lay it down. Make sure all of your fusible is on inside your patch. You don't want any of this hanging out, or you'll get this like I have on my ironing board. So don't do that. So make sure it's all, and if you need to trim it up again, and it's okay, like here it's not exactly to the edge right there, that's okay. Just make sure it's pretty much close to the edge, all inside. And you've got the fusible down, so this is the paper side, and then you're just going to iron that, and you're going to iron it, turn mine up a little bit, turn the steam off too, iron it very good so that it will bond good. And then once I have this bonded good, I'm going to let it cool off a little bit. So, you know, minute or so. So we'll come back once it's cool. Okay, so I've got it bonded and it's cooled off. And so now I can just peel that paper away. And then it's not sticky or anything, but you can feel the fusible. It's kind of a plastic feel on the back of the patch. And then you're just going to decide where you're going to lay that on the bag. Don't put it too far up to the top, because this is a drawstring bag. So you're going to drawstring or pull it closed. So come down about maybe halfway or so. Make sure it's kind of centered there. And the bags aren't just exactly square, but close enough. Looks good. And then iron that. And again, hold the iron on here. This time I'm going to use steam. press it down real good. And this is such thick fusible, it does take quite a bit of heat and quite a bit of steam to get it to melt and bond. But it is permanent once it's done. Let it kind of cool once you have it bonded down. Don't just lift up your bag. Let it kind of cool off a little bit, and then it will be stuck. And it's done. That's it. Okay, I just wanted to show y'all a lot of the Brother and the Baby Lock machines have a program built into them that will create these patches automatically for you. So I thought I would show you how those work. So I'm just going in and I'm picking a design that's built into the machine. You can bring a design in from a USB stick or wherever you get your designs from. And then I'm going to add a shape or a frame around this design that the patch is going to be created in that shape. So I'm choosing the oval, and I just want the straight stitch oval. And then I'm going to set that. I'm going to rotate and size that oval so that it goes around, fits around my design the way I want it. And so once I get that oval or that shape created around my design, then if you have this program on your machine, it's going to look like this little icon right here. It's a shield, and all you have to do is click on that. Then this is the distance, how far away this satin stitch and everything is going to be from our design. And I want it to be like right on it. So it's got the 0 selected. So you push OK, and it automatically creates the cutting lines and the satin stitch for our patch. So when you go into, once you send it to the embroidery screen, when it starts stitching off, you'll stitch it off just like we did our Santa Claus bag. And so it's going to stitch the design. You don't have to stitch this shape line. That's just the line that I use to create the shape of my patch. So you can stitch that off, or you can just bypass it. But then, see, this is what the machine automatically put in there. This is our cutting line. So after you stitch this off on your cutaway stabilizer and your fabric, you'll take it out of the hoop and you'll cut directly or right to the outside of that line. Then you'll hoop up a piece of water-soluble stabilizer, just like we did the aqua mesh. And then you'll stitch off this next straight stitch, and that's your placement line. Then you like spray the back of your patch with the 505 spray, and what it stitches off next is the satin stitch that will stitch your patch down to your water-soluble stabilizer. And then you just take it out of the hoop, trim it down, dissolve the water-soluble, just like we did with the Santa Claus, and then iron that fusion seal onto the back of it and iron it onto an apron or a hat or whatever you want to place that patch on. So I just thought I'd show you that program. So if you have it, it is the little icon that's the shield there. It's pretty neat.